Hello, I am Monica, a team member of the Unified 7 extracted from Foundation 1501. We are launching a new education policy document on reflexive practice for secondary students of St. Vincent to enhance education quality post COVID-19. It is evident that the effects of COVID-19 has created the largest disruption in education ever recorded in the history of St. Vincent. The objectives of the policy document are: 1. To effect change to the school's curriculum relative to the organization and scheduling of teaching. 2. Preparedness of teachers and students gearing towards digital learning. 3. To foster continued learning during unprecedented times. 4. To establish an outreach for students to be more involved and engage in self-directed learning. 5. Ensure learners use self-directed learning and maintain a strong self-esteem, understand self-awareness, and develop strong personal power skills and competencies to explore throughout life. The goals of the policy document are: 1. The strengthening of institutional resilience and academic stability through lifelong learning during and after COVID-19 using both traditional and remote learning. 2. The mandate of all secondary students to be equipped with high-speed internet access and the necessary mechanism at home to eliminate digital division. 3. To transform teaching techniques and/or procedures by adapting to the evolving technology and understanding proper execution of reflexive practice. 4. Increasing and maintaining academic excellence throughout secondary schools using self-directed learning in keeping with great self-empowerment. 5. Obtaining financial assistance from both local and regional institutions.
After COVID-19, secondary school students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be required to adopt a self-directed learning mindset, allowing them to develop new skills such as critical thinking, self-directed learning, analytical thinking, self-awareness, learning styles, and patterns. Students would also be made aware of weaknesses such as internet distractions and plagiarism, which may occur among students because of the accessibility of knowledge and the capacity to copy and paste. They may become entirely reliant on technology for learning, which would be a significant issue given technological limits such as internet failure and site limitations. Foundation 1501 provides St. Vincent Secondary School pupils the opportunity to improve their capacity to study as a self-sustaining, self-directed learner by using reflexive strategies to establish lifetime learning habits. Students scoring in the top 500 in the CXC test are able to register in the school of their choice, according to a study conducted by UNICEF 2017. Enrollment for the rest is determined by geographical location. In general, participants did not believe that this policy was always effective. They perceive it as a flaw in St. Vincent's system since many parents preferred to enroll their children in urban or suburban schools for convenience sake, or because they believe major schools are better prepared and have the greatest teachers. We, the members of the Unified 7 of Foundation 1501, agreed to investigate secondary school pupils in St. Vincent and the Grenadines because of this belief. We think that if students can acquire an I can do it mindset and rectify negative learning habits through skills such as reflective practices taught to them by Foundation 1501 practitioners, the secondary school level educational system in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be sufficiently developed.
This presenter's name is Trinity George. The task of Trinity for this group assignment is to provide information on stakeholders' involvement and access to educational opportunities in secondary schools in St. Vincent post-COVID-19. Stakeholders' involvement. Due to the pandemic, many schools worldwide resorted to virtual learning as a means to help curb the spread of this virus. Stakeholders have been trying to find out which remote learning strategies would be most suitable for the students. Many of the students do not have access to electronic devices due to having a lower socioeconomic status, being residents of rural areas, and many other reasons. Stakeholders can educate students on how to become reflective/reflexive practitioners by initiating inspirational activities, which can increase their success as a learner. Secondly, another way stakeholders bring positive changes in education is by creating a small or large group discussion about their personal experiences to engage in self-reflection and self-evaluation. Group discussions that allow students to reflect on their experiences is closely linked to the reflexive model by David Kolb. According to Kolb's reflective model, after the students reflect on their experiences, they can conclude and learn from that experience, and then apply what they would have learned. Additionally, when students perform a specific task, stakeholders can help them to identify what they did well, what they did not do well and why, and what methods they can use to improve their performance in the future. Access to educational opportunities. Some students, especially those from vulnerable socioeconomic backgrounds, would have fallen behind when schools reopen and will require remedial education and socio-emotional support. The government of St. Vincent can initiate a program that advocates for secondary school students to practice reflective journaling. This program ensures that these students are taking note of their journey to improve their learning progress. According to the Gibbs's reflective cycle, this will help them to think about how they deal with situations so that they can understand what they did well and which areas may need improvement. These reflective journals will help them to learn how to practice integrity and how to be completely accurate and honest with themselves. As the secondary school students participate in reflective journaling, they are able to critique which learning routines may limit and improve their learning, and develop successful learning routines. Furthermore, this journaling program can help to bring positive changes in education by allowing each student to identify his or her strengths and weaknesses, and how they can use them in a positive manner. The first stages of Gibbs's reflective cycle, which include description, feelings, evaluation, and analysis, will help them to come up with the most suitable conclusions to their problem. The final stage of Gibbs's reflective cycle is action plan. This will ultimately determine how the students utilize their successful learning strategies.
Good morning. This is Marsha A. Walker. I was given 2 topics to present on. These are training teachers, students, and others, and also financial economic relevance towards a secondary school education in St. Vincent during the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID crisis has forced education system worldwide to find alternative to face-to-face instruction. Like many Caribbean islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, educators have to quickly adapt and navigate new learning platforms. This transition from face-to-face to virtual learning takes a lot of time and preparation. This new environment poses a challenge to the teachers in St. Vincent, parents, and also the students. To succeed in a virtual classroom, teachers and students need their devices and a reliable internet connection. Most teachers of St. Vincent do not have the technical skill to use online learning platform effectively, and this have led to many challenges for teachers and students, and also threatened the continuation of education. With the commencement of distant learning across the OECS, educators have to quickly adapt to and navigate new online learning platforms. Students have experienced a major shift as well, from interactive learning in the classroom classroom to a more independent style of learning with a stronger emphasis and support from their parents or caretakers. In response to the challenges, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and Early Learning Program, ELP, has been encouraging coordinators in the 6 member states to support teachers as they seek to reach early grade readers in this unprecedented time. Teachers are assisted with printing and photocopying of school packages, and devices for teachers has been taking place on a case-by-case basis to ensure that teachers can continue to engage their students in the learning process. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, Blackboard Academy, Caribbean Sub-Regional Pilot 2020 aim to develop a teaching capacity in the new learning reality of distant education due to COVID-19. For this initiative, UNESCO, in cooperation with the regional ministries of education, had selected 40 facilitators from the English and Dutch Caribbean who were trained using online workshops by the Blackboard Academy at the elementary and secondary levels with strategies for designing the online classroom. Whether teachers decide to use a blended classroom or a fully online one, this course supported them to ease the transition in creating an online class environment that meets the need of both students and teachers. The University of the West Indies also launched the Education Response to COVID-19 Distant Learning and Teachers Training Strategies in the Caribbean to teachers. Through this pilot project, they have worked with the country's Ministry of Education and Microsoft to provide training for teachers. This is to strengthen the capacities of teachers and school leaders on digital skills and blended learning solutions. To succeed in a virtual classroom, students need one of the following: a computer, laptop, tablet, and along with these, a reliable internet connection. Schools or homes that lack this access face significant barriers to learning. On the other hand, virtual learning has added new items to students' school supply list, and they are expensive. Organization of Eastern Caribbean State that promotes economic integration ensures that all students can learn online while schools are closed due to the coronavirus pandemic. The OECS quickly localized regional resources and partners to develop the OECS education sector response and recovery strategy to COVID-19. This strategy focuses on 4 core areas. These are harmonization policy response among member states, transition to distributed learning, ensuring the well-being of students both in and out of schools, and promoting engagement. A US $3 million grant was allocated to the member states, and this includes St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Given that many students lack electronic devices and access to online learning, at least 12,000 vulnerable primary students across Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent received devices. The OECS Commission has also forged a strong partnership with international, regional, and national telecommunication regulators, and providers that provide various internet connectivity solutions to the vulnerable children who receive tablets from this program. In this manner, strategic financing and public-private partnership came together to close the digital equity divide in the Eastern Caribbean, ensuring the most vulnerable students can continue learning alongside their peers.
And Sala Finlay providing the curriculum context and delivery in the education policy document for St. Vincent and the Grenadines secondary schools. According to Stellenbosch University, the first step in planning the curriculum is to look at the context within which teacher and learning will take place. It can also be called the situational or needs analysis. Post-COVID-19, we must still ensure we are cautious and following guidelines to limit contact. This means to continue the development of our online digital learning forum or limit the amount of persons learning in the same space. For context, we will aim more towards teaching the children about 1. Health and wellness. Secondary school children should be taught more in depth about mental health and how to cope with life post-COVID-19. This will encourage them to practice positive values such as proper health practices and ways to reflect and learn from experiences to lessen anxiety and increase their productivity. 2. Economics. Life post-COVID-19 will not be the same for businesses. A lot of businesses in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will need to change their way of production and distribution methods. We should prepare and equip the students on a more realistic production cost and distribution methods, as well as calculations to fit the change that the country was forced to undergo. This will ensure they are confident once they leave secondary school and enter into the workforce with realistic figures. This will also force them to start reflecting for the future and how to handle certain economic problems in their work environment. 3. Finances or money management. This is a very important topic for students to be aware of. Expenses they or their parents know have tripled. They will now be using more electricity and Wi-Fi or data to facilitate their online class sessions. We should teach them how to manage their finances to ensure they are prepared or aware of the extra cost added due to COVID-19. This will teach them discipline and values. It can also have them reflect on how they spend money and how they can manage their funds better in the future with the extra costs. There are 2 main delivery approaches that we would look at for our curriculum delivery. 1. The hands-on approach. We can relate the topics to their real-life experiences for students who understand or learn better with live demonstrations. For example, with finances, we can ask the students about their monthly spending and now add in the cost for Wi-Fi or data, the increased electricity bills, as well as the increase of food as they now consume more once at home. This approach or delivery method will have the students understanding or relating to the topic, participating to share their expenses, as well as reflecting on how to adapt to post-COVID-19 finances. Secondly, video or the discussion approach. All students do not learn the same. While some love live demonstrations or can learn via reading, others can learn from videos and discussions.
During a discussion with a secondary school teacher at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Grammar School, it was noted that this is the most effective method since students are usually more open to share their thoughts or criticism on presented topics. Having the floor open to discussion can increase a student's confidence as their points will be listened to, reflective on, and positively criticized by their peers.
Letitia Sutherland speaking on the role of reflexive practice in the education policy. The reflective practice is defined as a capability to reflect on past actions. The individual will reflect on the decisions made leading to those previous actions and what could have been if a different route was chosen. The reflective practice used in the education policy will enforce students, teachers, and the government to reflect on what was done before COVID-19, the volcanic eruption, and more. The reflection will allow everyone to discover whether or not if these practices beforehand were beneficial or non-beneficial, while still determine if it is still a suitable practice and if to abolish or revise the practice. Reflexive practice is where an individual will question their current attitudes, thoughts, processes, assumptions, values, prejudice, and habitual actions. This allows the individual to make a conscious effort to revise and change those beliefs. Reflexive practice with the education policy will allow the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to obtain necessary information from the results of the reflective practice. The results will be a determining factor whether or not the government will change their techniques and update the old successful techniques. The revamp of those non-beneficial practices will aid in discovering the catalyst for the previous failure of the same practice. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, an example of reflective and reflexive practice is when the Lasso volcano erupted in April 9, 2021. The schools had to be used as shelters, even though school was to be reopened April 12th. At this time frame, education was placed on the back burner, and then the government ended up using online classes as they did not want to prolong not teaching the students of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This was successful as a few months beforehand the government had given students of St. Vincent and the Grenadines a tablet for the purpose of assisting the students with their schoolwork. This is a great example of reflexive practice as the government realized there was a gap between students whom had electronic device to do school assignments and a large group whom did not have such privilege due to poverty. The government fixed this reflected issue by coming up with a solution to give each student a tablet, leaving everyone at the advantage of progressing in schoolwork and having opportunities that they may not have if the government had not given those tablets. The government also encouraged reflective teaching as the teachers are mainly in contact with the students. Therefore, the government will want them to do some tests and share what they have discovered with them. So that they can be up to date with the current times and ensure that the students are receiving the best aid they can receive. Reflective teaching is where teachers take time to evaluate their teaching practices, revise their work to improve student belonging and learning while considering student feedback. This is done through investigation to discover the strengths and weaknesses of the current teaching practices, revise those practices, and plan for the future. Letitia Sutherland presenting the benefits, implications, effectiveness, and relevance of reflective practice to the education policy. Reflective practice may help you improve a student's self-awareness, which is an important component of emotional intelligence as well as their comprehension of others. Reflective practice may impact a student to become more developed since it provokes one to have a creative, critical, and analytical thinking abilities while also encouraging active participation in their schoolwork. We find that reflective practice can be effective because rather than doing the same thing the way you have always done them. Reflecting allows you to improve your talents and assess their effectiveness. It is about positively examining what you do and why you do it, and then deciding if there is a better or more effective way to do in the future. We would find the practice of reflective practice as an important method of learning new abilities. It is also improves an individual's ability to respond to difficulties, making timely decisions, regulate emotions, and maintains productive relationships. The relevance of reflective practice to the education policy is always high, as the teachers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines use reflective teaching. Reflective teaching is where teachers take time to evaluate their teaching practices, revise their work to improve student belonging and learning, while considering student feedback. This is done through gathering information to discover the strengths and weaknesses of the current teaching practices, revise those practices, and plan for the future. Effectiveness of reflective practices are done through self and external assessment of the teachers so that the students of St. Vincent and the Grenadines will receive the best lessons taught by their teachers. A video recorded teaching practices is a way to improve teaching techniques, as the teacher can watch the recording to see how effective their current teaching practices are impacting their students, making it easier to spot what practice needs to be changed and revised. Student evaluations are effective as the students have the opportunity to express any grievances on the current teaching practices and how the information is being passed on to them, leaving the teachers with the advantage of quickly identifying their shortcomings and finding solutions for those shortcomings. According to Larive 2008, there are 4 levels of reflection for teachers. These levels are pre-reflection, surface reflection, pedagogical reflection, and critical reflection. Pre-reflection, this is the beginning stage of reflection for teachers, as they only react to students and classroom situations automatically without conscious consideration of alternative. Surface reflection, this is where the teachers reflections is mainly focused on strategies to reach their predetermined goals. Pedagogical reflection. This stage is where the teachers reflect on educational goals, theories, underlying approaches, and connections between theoretical principles and practices. Critical reflection. The teachers reflect on moral and ethical implications and the consequences of their classroom practices on students. Reflective practice is often viewed as a practice of evolution in stages. Teachers may reflect at different levels simultaneously, questioning different areas of their practice.